Greetings fellow gamers and fellow commanders, and here we finally are at the Season 2 of Battlestar Galactica Deadlock Resurrection. It has finally come to the console. As some of you may or may not be aware, there was a lot of problems bringing this out on console. Initially it was scheduled for release a week after it came out on the PC. However, because of problems apparently rumoured on Microsoft's end, there was a slight delay in the release of Resurrection. As some of you may be aware, I've just come back off holiday, and unfortunately they managed to fix this whilst I was still away on holiday. So as soon as I came back, I got hit with a massive over 6 gig update to finally sort out the problems. So here we finally are. So today what I want to do is just do a quick comparison video on the Mark 1 and the Mark 2 Jupiters. I've had a little play with these ships and had a look at some of the stats on it and some of the important information that makes the Mark 1 the Mark 1 and the Mark 2 the Mark 2. So as you can see, we are on the home screen. It's the new home screen specifically come out for Season 2. If you remember the whole of Season 1, whether you had the Broken Alliance or Sin and Sacrifice, it was a view of the dataless space station with a Mark 1 Jupiter docked there as well. So shortly we're first of all going to have a look at the Mark 1. What I'm going to do is just refresh all the information to do with that ship, and then we will look at the stats as well. Then finally we'll move on to the Mark 2. I have got a bit of gameplay for that as well in the background whilst I'm talking. So folks, here we go. Let's load up, and here we are. The Mark 1 Jupiter Class Battlestar was designed by Sin and Quaid as a direct response to the rise in Cylon aggression. The Jupiter Class is the pinnacle of colonial Battlestar design. A fine balance of size, armour and artillery make it the most powerful warship currently flying for colonial fleet. Production of the Jupiter Class is limited by the Articles of Colonisation. So anybody who has played Season 1 or knows any background to do with Battlestar Galactica itself will know that the original Articles of Colonisation limited the colonies to possessing 1 Jupiter Class Battlestar each. So the Mark 1 Jupiter Class Battlestar has a fleet points of 2,150, a hull strength of 165. Squadrons, it has 2 Viper slots and 1 Raptor slot. Munitions wise, it has 1 munition slot available on this class. Onto the armaments, the front has 2 twin Battlestar artillery batteries. On the sides of the ship have 8-point defence turrets. On the top there are 8 double Battlestar artillery batteries, and on the bottom there are 6 artillery batteries. Onto the armour. On the top of the ship, the top has 90, the bottom has 90, on the sides is 120, on the rear is 60, and on the front is 120. Now the Jupiter Class Battlestar was the original Jupiter Class that was brought out and is very distinctive by its 3 arms to retract the pods, and is also a fantastic ship to take into battle and was widely used during the early days of the First Cylon War. The Mark II Jupiter Class Battlestar is a refit and redesign of the legendary Battlestar class. The first of the original Jupiters, Galactica, was grounded during the bombardment of Caprica City, which happened approximately 3 years after the end of the Sin and Sacrifice campaign. The damage sustained during the emergency jump was repaired, including improvements to the hull and armaments array. Due to the clandestine nature of the refit project, coupled with the lack of resourcing for the project, the design of the Mark II carries a number of flaws from its predecessor, including limited networks between subsystems and a restricted thrust to mass ratio. So with the Jupiter Mark II, you have fleet points of 2,700. The hull has been upgraded to 180, which is 15 points up from the Mark I class. On the squadrons you have still 2 Vipers or the new Taipan squadrons, and also have the ability to have 2 Raptor squadrons. That's 1 squadron up from the Mark I. The armaments of the Mark II class Battlestar is still 1 slot. And moving on to the weapons, on the front of the Mark II Battlestar we now have 6 double Battlestar artillery batteries. That is 4 up from the Mark I class. On the sides of this ship we still have 8 point defence turrets. On the top of the Mark II we have still 8 double Battlestar artillery batteries, and on the bottom of the Mark II we now have 8 double Battlestar artillery batteries. That is 2 up from the Mark I. So looking at this ship overall, there's been a lot of armour plating additions to the ship, so let's just go through them. So on the top of the Mark II we have 100 points for the armour. That is 10 above what you got on the Mark I. On the bottom, the same again, is 100, which is 10 up from the Mark I. On the side of this ship we have 140 points for the armour, which is 20 up from the Mark I. On the rear of the ship it is currently on 80 points, which is 20 up from the Mark I. And finally on the front of the Mark II, the armour points are now 140, which is 20 above what we got on the Mark I class. Okay, so far, because we're still currently playing Sin and the Sacrifice, I haven't done any of the Resurrection missions yet. The general plan is once we've completed Sin and the Sacrifice, we will look at moving on to Resurrection. For now, I've gone in and played a couple of skirmish games to have a look at the Mark II class. So far, very good. I think the benefits are, of course, the hull strength, and of course the extra armour plating that you do get on the Mark II class. As far as the upgrades to the weapon systems, now anybody who has played this game will know that the Battlestar artillery has a very low accuracy rating and also has a low reload ability. So what I tend to do when I'm playing this game from a tactical point of view is, for the Raptors, I will go for the Assault Raptors. Main reason for that is because they can paint targets, and it does actually improve the hit ratio of the Battlestars or any other ships that you are using to attack the enemy. So on the whole, great design. It is now looking more like the Galactica that we all know and love from the reboot TV series. I have seen a couple of snippets knocking around suggesting that Valkyrie won't be that far away either, so hopefully that will be out very soon, and coupled with all the command updates and the designs that we've been coming out with so far, definitely think we can look forward to a lot more strategy and a lot more development of the current storyline.
Been through worse. We're taking sustained fire.
Okay, currently with Resurrection, in the skirmish matches anyway, I am finding a couple of problems with the lag. So I have messaged them, and if I get any information on that, I will let you know. So just to conclude this video, the Mark II class Jupiter Battlestar is a great addition to the colonial fleet. I think that there are some things that they could do with the dressing, but obviously at this point during the timeline of the first Cylon war, I can understand that obviously they want to keep in line with the story. So the restricted thrust to mass ratio, of course, is a problem. Anybody who plays this game, when you see a massive battery of missiles heading towards you, you want to try and swing that Battlestar around as quick as possible to try and engage your flak. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please consider hitting that like button, and if you like the videos on my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please stick them in the comments below, and hopefully we'll be back in a few days to do another mission of Sin and Sacrifice. Thanks for watching. Happy gaming.